Poštovane kolege, dobar dan.
Dear colleagues, welcome one more time. What we will have now is the press conference of the AFET delegation, which has been visiting Montenegro for 2 days. We will now hear from the chair of the AFET committee, Mr. David McAllister. Mr. McAllister, the floor is yours.
Dobro jutro. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for attending this press point. My name is David McAllister, and I have an honor to lead a delegation of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the European Parliament to Albania and to Montenegro. In total, we were 5 colleagues on this mission. I would like to welcome also Ms. Iljana Zovko, who is the Vice Chair of our committee. This year's set of recommendations on Montenegro, the European Parliament's annual report on Montenegro, has been voted in our Foreign Affairs Committee in May and is due to be voted in the European Parliament's plenary in June. Unfortunately, the rapporteur for Montenegro in the European Parliament, Mr. Tonino Pizzula, could not join us during this mission. Our visit to Montenegro started on Tuesday afternoon. When we arrived from Albania, we started our program with a visit of the border crossing point at Bozaj Hani I Hotit, constructed with assistance of the European Union. We have since then had meetings with members of the recently appointed government, members of the parliament, as well as civil society representatives. We met the Deputy Prime Minister, we met the Foreign Minister, we met the Speaker, and we met President Đukanović. We are happy to finish our program with the official opening of this Europe House this morning, which you probably all attended in the presence of Deputy Prime Minister for Foreign Policy and European Affairs, Ms. Jovana Marović. I would like to make a few points. First of all, we welcome Montenegro's continued strong commitment to the European Atlantic orientation and the determination to become a member of our European Union. Montenegro continues to be a strong ally contributing to European security with full alignment 100% with the EU's common foreign and security policy, including the solidarity as regards the sanctions adopted in light of Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. Montenegro is also a valuable, most welcome partner in NATO. During our meetings with policymakers and civil society representatives whom we have met over the past 2 days, we passed the following key messages. Firstly, we continue to strongly support Montenegro's path towards becoming an EU member state, and we recognize its track record as a front runner in the negotiations. The unwavering support of Montenegrin citizens underpins the country's strong aspirations towards joining the EU. Representatives of your country are often guests in Brussels. We were glad to receive Prime Minister Abazovic and Deputy Prime Minister Marović in Brussels on their first visit to the European Union's institutions just last week. In this context, we welcome the recently appointed government's strong pro-European agenda and determination to make significant progress in key areas, notably on electoral and judicial reforms and the fight against organized crime and corruption. It is imperative for Montenegro's policymakers, both the government and the parliament, the Skupština, to seize the opportunity to advance on reforms for the benefit of all citizens. We continue to call upon all political forces to engage in constructive political dialogue, cooperation, and commitment under a democratic parliamentary process and with meaningful public consultation involving all relevant stakeholders, including civil society. Let me underline the importance of advancing on meeting the interim rule of law benchmarks. In this regard, we hope to see progress on judicial reform, including the pending appointments to key institutions, including the Constitutional Court judges. We welcome the recent appointments to judicial institutions, as well as the Prosecutorial Council, now featuring an NGO representative. We note the special active role of the Special Prosecutor's Office in the fight against corruption and organized crime. Unfortunately, the situation in this domain remains concerning, and we encourage Montenegro to continue strengthening its response to addressing this. Allow me also to highlight our concerns with the growing hate speech, online harassment, disinformation, and malign foreign influences in the media, which spark and promote divisions and polarization. Freedom of expression, media pluralism, transparency of ownership, editorial independence, and investigative reporting, free from attacks and free from harassment, are the foundation of truly democratic functioning of a society. The steps taken to introduce tougher penalties and to prosecute threats and attacks on journalists must be stepped up. Rest assured, ladies and gentlemen, that we stand by Montenegro, not only with words of support and encouragement, but also through our technical and financial assistance that facilitates Montenegro's advancement on the pro-European path. Our support fosters the green and digital transformation under the Economic and Investment Plan, as well as the instrument to pre-accession assistance. To conclude, Montenegro shows that it is committed to its European future, and it can deliver positive results. All 33 screened chapters have been opened, and the time has come to speed up reforms, enabling their closure. I look forward to seeing that the strong momentum for reforms is maintained, and we will stand by and support Montenegro along the way. Thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to take your questions.
Hvala vam na pažnji i sada ću saslušati vaša pitanja. Thank you, Mr. McAllister. Dear colleagues, now we have time for your questions. Please introduce yourself and tell us which media you represent here. Dobar dan, ja sam Željka Svicar, ja sam iz Novog...
The EU recently adopted a resolution on foreign influence or foreign interference in democratic processes, a document that includes and mentions countries of the Western Balkans. In the articles of the document, it expresses concern over the Orthodox Church attempts in countries such as Montenegro, Serbia, Bosnia, and Republika Srpska to promote Russia and spread influence. I want to ask you why the EU was not able to recognize these threats or problem earlier, and also if you can explain to us what would be the concrete help from the EU that Western Balkan countries will get to face these problems. Thank you.
Madam, thank you for your question. You're addressing a very important issue. The European Parliament has paid special attention to foreign interference, also in the member states of the European Union. We have installed a special committee in the European Parliament dealing with this matter under the chairmanship of my French colleague Raphael Glucksmann. And foreign interference, foreign malign interference, is a challenge not only for countries in the Western Balkans, but also in some of our member states. And foreign interference from third countries who have very different views than we do on the rule of law, on human rights, on media freedom, on media pluralism, who also have different views than we do on foreign affairs, on security and defense-related issues, is of concern. And you rightly mention Russian interference. Russian interference has been increasing in recent years all over the place, and the aim of the Kremlin is to destabilize European countries, to try to destabilize the functioning of European liberal democracies. And what do we have to do in dealing with foreign interference? We have to strengthen our own resilience. We have to, first of all, put the spotlight on fake news. We have to put the spotlight on propaganda. We have to put the spotlight on political forces who are using all kinds of ways to spread disinformation, lies, divisive rhetoric, trying to contribute to a polarization of our societies. So first of all, we have to demask foreign interference. And then the best way to counter foreign malign interference is to strengthen our resilience. That means also to step up and to further improve our own media communication, inform citizens what is about, also to tell citizens in an objective way what kind of lies are being spread. The best argument against populists is always facts. We need facts, facts, facts. And that's why I welcome also the support of the European Union here in your country, Montenegro, to support independent media, because in the end it is independent media which is able to actually build bridges to the citizens of your country. The Western Balkans have been, all 6 countries in the Western Balkans have been a target of malign influence. The most obvious is Russia, but we also have other countries who are perhaps operating in a more subtle way, trying to influence public opinion. Let me also name here Chinese activities. So we know where the Russian activities are mainly focused, on which countries: in Serbia and in the Republika Srpska, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but there are also Russian attempts to interfere in other countries. So we stand ready, we are very active, and we will not allow the Kremlin's propaganda to influence our democratic liberal societies.
Marko Mišić, televizija Vijesti.
Mišić TV Vijesti. Yes, that's better. Marko Mišić, TV Vijesti. Can you briefly comment the beginning of work or the initial steps taken by the special state prosecutor who's newly appointed? And in this period, the former Supreme Court president was arrested, and the president of the Commercial Court of Montenegro for the serious suspicion of corruption in both cases. And will you continue to insist on resolving the old affairs from the past, such as recording and the envelope affairs, having in mind that the main actor in the envelope affair is still advisor to the president of the state, Mr. Djukanovic? Thank you.
Well, as I just mentioned in my opening remarks, we as European Parliament note the active role of the Special Prosecutor's Office in the important fight against corruption and organized crime. We all know that organized crime and corruption is one or probably the biggest challenge Montenegro is facing. And to fight organized crime and to fight corruption, what we need are strong, fully equipped, independent institutions. That is key, and that is why we are so much focusing on the fundamental chapters 23 and 24. It is about strengthening the rule of law. And that's why I call on the Montenegrin government and the parliament that we need to now advance on the interim rule of law benchmarks. We need to see progress on the judicial reform, including further appointments to all key institutions, including the Constitutional Court judges. And this was also my message yesterday to the parliamentarians we met. Advancing on the EU integration path is not only a matter of the government, it's also a matter of the parliament. And I fully understand as a parliamentarian myself, and I've been a parliamentarian first in German politics and then in European politics for 25 years, I'm a passionate parliamentarian. And it's always the role of the parliament to scrutinize the work of the government, to criticize the work of the government, especially when you're in the opposition. But on the other hand, Parliament also has a responsibility, and we have this situation here that we have a minority government, which doesn't have an own parliamentary majority, but the government needs these majorities to appoint the judges, and that's why I call on all political representatives of this country, despite all the different political views we have in a democracy, when it comes to the fundamentals, every single woman and every single man is responsible for her or his own actions. So I do hope that the government can reach out and find this majority in the parliament, but what I've heard is that the talks are ongoing. Now, the concrete case you mentioned. I'm a lawyer myself. I studied law at the University of Hanover. The presumption of innocence applies to everyone. That is a fundamental principle of our rule of law. So first of all, the presumption of innocence applies to everyone, also to the individuals you mentioned. What we now need is a fair trial, a thorough investigation, and in the end, a decision will be taken by independent judges, by independent investigators. What is important is that the judiciary needs to work without any kind of political influence. Independence doesn't only mean on paper independence. Independence means that state prosecutors and judges can do their work without being influenced and harassed from any kind of side. That is the advice I would give. One thing is clear, the institutions here in Montenegro are operating, and they operate under the rule of law. That's how to move forward, and the rule of law principle includes the right of a fair trial. It includes the presumption of innocence that applies to everyone, and in the rule of law, everyone is equal under the law, and nobody at all stands over the law.
Još jedno pitanje.
We have time for additional questions. Please, take the floor.
I'm Ljubica Gojković from First Television, Prva televizija. Isprva želim da vas pitam, komentarisali ste I pohvalili...
You mentioned and you praised Montenegro for combating Moscow and Kremlin propaganda. However, two media, Sputnik and Serbian papers, are prohibited and banned in Montenegro. No one knows why. There is no explanation. Those two media are banned. Do you believe that this ban violates the principle of freedom of media? My second question is, how do you comment the fact that not even 2 months after receiving information from Europol about Skype communication of two police officers, Lazovic and Milovic, they have not been prosecuted or arrested yet?
Thank you. I cannot comment on your second question simply because I don't know the case in detail, and I would be walking on very thin ice if I started commenting on individual cases, so apologies for that. On the first point, I am a staunch defender of media freedom. I will do everything to defend independent quality media. But with all due respect, Sputnik is neither independent nor quality. Sputnik is disgusting. I follow what Russia Today and Sputnik have done in my own home country in Germany, spreading lies, disinformation, propaganda, evil propaganda day by day. I can only tell you I welcome that these awful, and I'm refusing to call them media outlets, are banned in countries of the European Union. They have done enough harm. I'm very passionate on this, and I'm proud that in all my career, I have never, ever given a single interview, neither to Sputnik or Russia Today, and I promise you something, I will continue to do that all my life. And those colleagues in the European Union who had been given interviews to Sputnik and Russia Today, trying to give them some kind of legitimation, should be ashamed of themselves. I'm not in the pro-Russian camp, I'm sorry.
O ruskom kampu, izvinjavam se,
Dobar
očigledno
dan,
nisam na
Biljana
proruskoj strani.
Matijašević.
Good morning, Biljana Matijašić from Viesti. My question for you is, how do you comment the position of French President Macron about formation of political organization that would bring together countries that share European values? Is it, as we can hear, a kind of replacement for EU membership? And will that put Western Balkan countries into a corridor, into a waiting line for joining European Union?
Well, there are more than 45 countries in Europe, nearly 50, and we are 27 in the European Union. And we as European Union deal with countries who are not members of our family. There are some countries who don't want to become a member of the European Union. There are countries who are nowhere in any kind of position to becoming a member of the European Union. We have a country like the Great United Kingdom who has left our European Union. We have countries who are closely linked to the EU but are not members, like Norway, Liechtenstein or Iceland, who are members of the single market. Switzerland is very closely linked to the European Union with more than 100 different individual agreements. Turkey in part is a part of the customs union. So we have very different ways of operating. And I think the French president is right, and he has been supported by the German chancellor and others, but of course we need to always come up with new ideas. How do we deal with countries who are not members of our European Union, but who want to work closely together with us? We have these formats already. But the Western Balkans, and especially Montenegro, is a different case. Montenegro is clearly on a European integration path. Your country wants to become a member of the European Union, and I fully support that your country will one day become a member. So this is not something different. This is not an aliud. This is not an alternative. Yes, we can talk about formats of working together with non-EU countries, but this can only be an addition to the path your country is already on now for more than or nearly 10 years. So Montenegro's path towards the European Union is based on its own merits, and the foundation for this is Article 49 and the procedures. And in the end, your country will have to fulfill all the judicial, political, and economic criteria. And we all know that you still have quite a long way to go, but you have all the support of the European Union and especially the European Parliament. We want your country to eventually join our family of nations, but it's of course up to the government and the Parliament to implement the necessary reforms I have described. So that's where I would put it. You could do the one thing without questioning the other, and I strongly believe that all 6 countries in the Western Balkans have a European perspective, and among these 6, Montenegro is a front runner, and you have opened all chapters, and now it's time to close them step by step. On the last point, I think that President Macron was also referring more to the debates we are now having with Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia, because, as you know, these three countries have applied to get candidate status granted. And this is a decision the heads of state and government will have to decide probably at the European Council in June, in case the matter is already ready then. But between, if you look at a country like Ukraine, between the beginning of an EU accession process, and the first step is to grant candidate status, and joining the EU, there's a long, long way. And in the meantime, I would always advocate, how can we bring countries like Ukraine or Moldova closer to the European Union on the basis of the existing association and partnership agreements? And there are many, many ways how we can bring countries closer to our EU with the long-term goal of EU membership. But Montenegro has long, long passed this phase. You are already on your track towards EU membership.
Hvala, izvolite.
Radio Free Europe, I cannot hear the lady. She needs to put the microphone closer. I have problems. She needs to speak into the microphone. I'm sorry, I have problems hearing her.
Izvolite.
From the government, we hear that this is the last chance that Montenegro should not miss when it comes to EU membership, and especially the speed and acceleration of this. But do you agree with this remark, and how the recent change of government is related to this acceleration and speed? As for Open Balkans, how do you in the European Union see this initiative about Open Balkans and these optimistic messages we heard from you? Actually, do you see Montenegro in this initiative with Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, with all the problems that these countries have? So.
Thank you. On the Open Balkan Initiative, that is a decision which needs to be taken here in Montenegro. We have 3 out of the 6 Western Balkan countries who are cooperating in the OBI: Serbia, Albania, North Macedonia. The other 3 countries are not part of this project: Montenegro, Bosnia-Herzegovina, and Kosovo. The decision whether Montenegro wants to be included in the Open Balkan Initiative, and if yes, to which extent and which degree, that's something the government and the parliament here have to decide. I would say that we as a European Union take a neutral stance on this. This is not our... Well, it's not our... we're not in a position to comment. We respect the decision of governments who are in favor of this project, and we respect other governments who are critical. We were in Tirana Monday and Tuesday. Prime Minister Rama and other interlocutors were praising the Open Balkan Initiative, but I'm very sure if we went to Pristina or another capital, people would see that differently. So that's up to the Montenegrins to decide. I also understood in the last 24 hours here that there are different views on this matter also within the political parties in your country. That was a question on the OBI, and the other question was on...
Whether this is the last call for
Oh.
Montenegro to join.
I'm often asked, like many other colleagues, when we go to the Western Balkan countries, when will our country join the European Union? Can you give us a date? Can you give us a year? And I always say, well, the date when your country will be ready to join the European Union completely depends on your own government and parliament, on the business, on the whole society. Montenegro still has a long way to go, yes. And huge challenges lie in front of all politicians here. But I sincerely hope that step by step you will take all these hurdles, that you will be able to face all these challenges, and when you are ready, then I'm very sure that the 27 member states who will have an important role to play, and a majority of MEPs who will also have to decide, will then reward you for the path you're going. So I would just encourage all people here in Montenegro, carry on. Carry on. One thing is clear, the last 1.5 years didn't really bring the country forward on its European integration path. The last 1.5 years were lost years in this matter. Now we have a new government, and without getting engaged in domestic politics here in Montenegro, I'm not a political player in this country. I'm just somebody who really likes your country, really likes your people. I strongly believe that you are a valuable member of our European family, and I would like to see in my political lifetime your country join the European Union, and that's why I can only encourage all politicians, do your work, and please be as constructive as possible. The last 1.5 years were difficult. Also for us in Brussels, who are so supportive of your country.
Molim vas, imamo vremena možda
Right.
za jedno brzo pitanje.
We
Janković.
may have time for one quick question. Radio Free Europe, Mr. Janković from Radio Free Europe. I would like to hear an assessment, evaluation of yours. How much Russian aggression on Ukraine and everything the EU goes through in this environment, how that can affect Montenegro's path to EU? Is it a chance, as the government says, or a limiting factor?
Hvala vam i sa ovim pitanjem.
Thank you for this question.
The Russian war against Ukraine is unjustified. It's barbaric. We are facing a fully fledged military invasion of an independent sovereign country in the 21st century, something which many of us thought would never again happen. It is outrageous. President Putin and his entourage are war criminals, and they will be taken to account one day, and justice will prevail. The European Union stands with Ukraine in solidarity. What we are doing is to put maximum pressure on the Russian Federation on the one hand, and maximum solidarity with Ukraine on the other hand. I hope that the 6th sanctions package against the Russian Federation will be adopted. I call on all member states to put aside the differences. We need to move forward. We need to continue using every single tool we have in increasing the pressure on President Putin and the Kremlin. And on the other hand, we are supporting Ukraine in many, many different fields, economically, financially, and member states are also providing military equipment. What does this mean for us in Europe? I think you will agree that we have seen a remarkable unity of the EU in the response to the war of aggression. In the recent 8 weeks, in the last 8 weeks, we have seen remarkable unity among the 27. 5 sanction packages were adopted in record time without big discussions because we are united in our approach. We have seen the unity of the West in a way we haven't seen it for years. The transatlantic cooperation with the United States, with Canada, with the United Kingdom, with Japan, with South Korea, with Australia, with New Zealand. The political West stands united. And let me once again thank also Montenegro for fully aligning with all the sanctions, despite some specific challenges your country is facing in dealing with the Russian Federation. This war of aggression has brought new momentum to Eastern Partnership countries and their relations with the European Union. Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia have applied to become candidate status granted. So there's a new momentum here in the Eastern Partnership. It's up to the 27 heads of government to decide whether Ukraine and other countries can become candidate status or not, but the European Parliament has been very clear on this across party lines. We would welcome that Ukraine is granted candidate status, also as an acknowledgement of the heroic defense of European values the Ukrainians are showing every day. This is not only Ukraine defending its people, its country, its liberty against a barbaric Russian invasion. The Ukrainians are defending our European values. And that's why Ukraine, just like Montenegro, is a part of our European family. And we would like to offer the Ukrainians a perspective also to begin a long process of EU accession. And for the Western Balkans, this means now that war has come back to Europe, now that war is sadly a reality, that we have to step up our engagement in the Western Balkans. I, as a German, have always advocated for us to be more engaged in the 6 Western Balkan countries, because where we are not engaged, others will fill the space, and other third countries, and I mentioned Russia, have very different ideas and very different interests. They want to destabilize the region. They want to spark nationalist rhetoric. They want to spark negative rhetoric. They want to create new divisions and tensions, whereas we Europeans support a policy of regional cooperation and reconciliation. And that's why I would strongly advocate, and I support all European leaders, and I have heard new statements from the German Chancellor, from the French President and others, that we need to now increase our engagement in the Western Balkans, despite all the new challenges we are facing in our Eastern Partnership. And rest assured, the European Union has provided, through the IPA free funding, and Ms. Jelena Zovko, who is here with us, is the rapporteur in the European Parliament for IPA free funding. In this term, we will have more than 14 billion euros available for the 6 Western Balkans countries to support actively their pro-European integration path. So we are ready here to support you economically, financially, and also politically. And to conclude, this visit of the European Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee was also a small contribution showing our active support across party lines to Albania and to Montenegro in this case. But let me add that the other 4 countries of the Western Balkans are also high on our agenda. We regularly visit these countries, and the European Parliament has already adopted some of our annual reports. For instance, the report on Albania, and the next big debate in the European Parliament in June will be then the debate on the situation in Montenegro. And I would like to welcome and invite all Montenegrin media to report about our debate, because people in Montenegro will see we have members of parliament from Finland, from Ireland, from Greece, from Portugal, from Germany, from Croatia, dealing with your country. And if you look at the draft of the report, I think it gives a good overview how we as outsiders see the development in your country. And the recommendations we make are meant as positive recommendations to support the policymakers in this country to take the right decisions. Thank you so much for your interest, and good luck to Montenegro, and especially to the independent free media in this country.
Hvala vam, ovim je iscrpljeno vreme za našu
Yeah.
konferenciju. Hvala na pažnji, na pitanjima. Thank you, Mr. McAllister,
Thank
for
you.
your attention, for your time.